What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Blaklist Podcast. As always, thank you so much for watching, listening, viewing, subscribing. Today's guest is an amazing guest. It's been months in the making, so I'm excited we finally got to sit down and chop it up together. He's a up-and-coming content creator. He's also an entrepreneur. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get in. Ladies and gentlemen, Quinn.stone. What's up,
Hey,
Quinn?
what's up? How you doing, Jared?
Good, man. I appreciate you coming on. I know this has been some months in the making,
Yeah,
so we've
yeah,
actually been able to make it happen.
yeah. Me too. I'm glad we made it happen,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. This is a last minute thing too. This was just like a hit you up this morning, like probably do tonight. I'm like, okay, cool.
For sure.
It's
Yeah, it's been crazy. It's been crazy the amount of opportunities and things that have been coming along, and then we all kind of need a time to chill out, and I think you understand the importance of giving your time to and giving yourself time to heal
yeah,
after you've like really freaking been grinding hard. You kind of need like time to
yeah,
just like let things settle and then be like, okay, I'm ready to go again. So it's
absolutely.
kind of been the case for me. So
Yeah, I mean, we got to protect our mental health and every, that's what it comes down to, like when I texted you, like I was going through a funk. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't posted in like probably a month. I haven't done anything, and it was just I was just going through it. I'm a human being, even though we have this
yeah,
platform. I'm a human being, and so, but I do realize like this is a therapy for myself. Just doing this is therapy.
yeah,
So,
absolutely,
so now I'm excited and we just, get to let people know, this is, if we could do it, they can do it.
absolutely.
So, so tell us, all right. So you know what? I mean, again, like I told you, there's no strict format. So kind of just tell us a little bit about who you are, kind of your background a little bit, and we'll just kind of jump in from there.
All right. Well, just a fair warning. I tend to like go on tangents, like when you're talking about mental health, I've got ADHD, so I might get completely lost in some completely random thing. So if I'm talking too much, please
I,
don't
I
be
rein
afraid
you
to be
back
like,
in.
what, and then what happened? And then I'll be
It's
like, oh yeah, yeah, okay, let's move it along.
all good.
Um, but I guess a real quick bio of like where I came from and everything, and kind of to lay down the groundwork of like understanding where my brain was and where I was mentally as a child. We moved here to the States when I was 4 years old. My mother, my brother, and I, we literally had the backpacks that we had on and didn't even speak the language. Like we were like those immigrants that like came here with nothing in search of like the American dream. And we got to a little place in Utah where my mom had met some guy, and we were trying to make a living and come up and be out of like poverty and stuff. And meanwhile, I have to adjust to the language. I have this accent. I'm getting bullied at school. um, Next thing I'm like 7 years old, and all the neighborhood kids are kind of going through the phase like, show me yours, I'll show you mine type of stuff. And the older kids were basically making us all like molest each other at like
Mm,
5 to 7 years old. So from an early age, not growing up with a father, having no sturdy father figure, being heavily bullied, being molested, that really made me feel like I had nobody. I was like on my own. Even with like my mom and my brother and everybody else, I really felt like I couldn't trust anybody. Like I couldn't, count on anybody to like protect me. I felt really alone, abandoned. I felt worthless. I felt confused. On top of, being molested and the bullying and everything, I struggled to pay attention in school. Um, I really excelled at the things that I wanted to excel in. Oftentimes, I was doing like the bare minimum to get by in school, and um, I was called stupid by my teacher once, uh, and I was getting suspended all the time for fighting. my first suspension was actually for selling. I was in third grade and I was selling Playboys at recess, because like I was more interested in making the money instead of learning the education. And so I was like, I just grew up kind of in that hustle mentality, have to do everything for myself, have to like, you know, buy things for myself and trade things. I was always on the streets. I mean, this was also the 90s, where like we didn't have cell phones, but we were just like all the neighborhood kids would be playing on the streets until the lights came out. So always very like the lone wolf and everything. And then I moved around a lot. It was hard for me to make friends. And I finally got to high school, and I was going to a new school because I had moved 6 different schools by the time I got to high school. I get to a new school in a high school, and I start to make friends with all the skater kids and everything, and we start smoking weed, and pretty soon I started to see that I could make friends by selling them stuff. So I started selling weed. I always had this like urge to like be accepted, be validated in some sort of way. And when I found drugs, it kind of gave me that segue to be like, oh, this is how I make friends. This is how I get like the false sense of camaraderie. People are always calling me and wanting me to be available for them, and it's at my leisure, and I get to like pick and choose who I talk to, I felt a lot of control being able to like provide something for these people. And once I started getting heavily into opiates, I started off with Oxycontin actually after getting a surgery. I was actually only smoking weed. I got a surgery, and then I discovered Oxycontin. After I was through with my prescription of Oxycontin, I was like, oh shit, like I really like that feeling. Like I want that. I want more of that. Like I just felt like I could, Oxycontin made me just feel like I had so much energy and was motivated to do stuff like in the very beginning, until I became dependent on it. But so the Oxycontin, whole big scandal thing exploded, and everything went under with Oxycontin. You couldn't get oxys anymore. They were all jelly filled and all this other crap. So it was easier for me to just be like, oh well, I'm just going to move to this other opiate, which at first was presented to me as opium. And because I didn't know, I was like, oh sure, whatever, it's black tar opium. Like whatever, it's the same shit. And we ended up doing it, and pretty soon I'm hooked on heroin at freaking 18 years old. So from 18 years old, I didn't really think I had a problem. Like I knew that drugs were bad, but I didn't think that I had a problem with drugs because I wanted to be there. I wanted to feel that way. I craved the escape. I craved the numbing. I liked the feeling that it gave me. I loved everything about it. And because I was in a good place as far as like financially and whatever, I didn't have to worry about like losing my house or all this other stuff. My mom was one of the like highest paid investigators in the Midwest, and she basically got me off of all of my charges. She knew all the lawyers, all this crazy stuff. And so like I didn't really fear anything. And I just went hard in the paint with freaking robberies and home invasions and like selling drugs heavily. We had people shoot up our house. Back in 2005, I was selling dope out of my mom's house. It was starting to get to be bad, where I was like starting to hit rock bottom and stuff. And I had like this pain in my groin. I woke up with this pain in my groin. I was pissing blood. And I go to the hospital. They do this emergency operation, and this operation goes bad. Well, the operation goes well, but when they hit me with the adrenaline to wake me up from the anesthesia, my heart rate skyrocketed. I blew my coronary artery and went into cardiac arrest because I had been doing coke and heroin, and then they hit me with adrenaline.
Yeah.
So even that, like they told me like, hey, you, like come say goodbye to your son because he's not gonna make it. Like they thought I wasn't gonna make it off the table. I was in a coma for 5 days, and I did make it out of that coma, obviously. And they were like, well, we don't give you more than like 6 months to live because you've done so much damage to your heart. Like you have the heart of like a 90-year-old man now, so you'll be lucky to see 6 months.
Right.
Even at that point, it wasn't enough for me to like change my life because I still craved the escape. I still loved feeling fucked up. I loved, everything that drugs brought me. Even at rock, man, the only thing that I can, like, the only escape that I have is drugs. Like, this is the only thing that I have. It was like my best friend, my girlfriend, my wife, my relationship. It was everything to me. And I finally, I just started to really get to a point where it was no longer fun. It didn't feel good anymore. It didn't bring me the joy that I wanted. It didn't, shooting up constantly, more and more, the fear of like overdosing and all this other stuff. And my veins were so shot, I would spend hours trying to hit a vein. It was just the pain. I lost I lost contact with my sister. I was basically manipulating my mom into giving me money constantly. And I felt guilty and terrible every single day about like the lies and everything, the manipulation. And I was pulling schemes. I was robbing. I was all sorts of crazy shit. And I was just like, man, this can't be it for me. Like honestly, I was seeing people like go on vacation, going on boats and having fun with friends and, go traveling. And I was like, dude, I want that. Like, I want something more than this drug addict, drug dealer, freaking on the streets, hustling 24/7 lifestyle. Like there is no, like, the chances of me being a successful drug addict are far less than me being freaking like famous. You know what I mean? Like the odds of me being a successful drug addict are slim to none. The only successful drug dealers that we know are Pablo Escobar and those people. And those people run countries. I was like, I'm not going to be Pablo Escobar.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just not. I'm just some random freaking dude. So I was like, I'm not going to live the life that I want on drugs. I have to find something that makes me feel better. And I really need to find out what it is about drugs that I love so much. Why do I love the escape? Why do I love numbing? Why do I love, like, just falling asleep and not having to deal with reality for 8 hours, 9, 10 hours at a time after I've already slept 10 hours? I'm sleeping 20 hours of the day and I like it. Why? Like, that's not life. And I was like, there's gotta be more to this life than this. This can't be it for me. I just refuse to believe that, like, my story, like, if somebody was gonna read it, like, it was just gonna be like he lived and he was a freaking drug addict.
Yeah.
His whole life. And
there's something more to life than just that,
Yeah. It was just constant, like, looking over your shoulder. Freaking, am I gonna get in a fight today? Am I gonna get arrested? Am I gonna freaking have to like shoot somebody? Is somebody gonna shoot me? It was just constantly, your brain's just stuck in fight or flight mode, just always like, just lone wolf. And it was lonely. And the whole reason why I freaking started selling drugs and doing drugs and everything is to feel not lonely and to feel a part of something. By selling drugs and doing drugs with everybody, I thought, oh, well, I'll be accepted and I'll feel validated as a person and all this stuff. And then,
because that's what I was going to ask you, was like, what was the first thing that led you to like want to use aside from your surgery, And it was just what, the acceptance?
I think so. I would, yeah. I think so because I moved around quite a bit as a kid. I was heavily bullied because I had an accent early on, and because everybody knew I was French and everything. And
Mm.
people back then didn't really look like, they kind of looked down on the French. And I heard a lot of comments about the war and about freaking, it's just stupid comments, about
Right.
anything that anybody could bully people about. That's just how they were. Anything that describes who you are, people will point out just to be like that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think moving around so much, not having real camaraderie or real friendships or people to hang out with, when I found that, like, oh, I could, like, call somebody up and be like, hey, you want to smoke weed together, or you want to come, it was a way to get people together. Or like when people would call me and I had the house that people would like hang out at, and we had the pool and everything else, and people would hang out, and I'd have like 20 people at my house just like smoking weed and stuff. Like I craved that because I didn't have that as a kid. And so when I saw that I could like bring people together, and I felt like wanted, I felt like these people cared about me, or that they like at least liked who I was, or what it was that I like brought to the table. That was a way of me validating my self-worth. Like, oh,
So
look, I can bring all these people. Like, obviously, like, you're good enough.
right. What did your mom like? How did your mom feel about all that? Like, did she know to the extent of what you were doing, fully, or
Well,
was she
my
like in
mom,
denial, or how was that?
um, it's a great question. My mom went through a lot with her upbringing. She led a really terrible upbringing. She has, uh, you know, my older brother was a criminal as well. He's actually deported. He can't come back to the United States ever. He was into meth and boosting cars and all sorts of stuff. And so I was always kind of looked at, like, growing up. My brother was always kind of the bad kid. He was always running away, getting caught by the cops, and doing all this stuff before my mom became like this incredible investigator. So he was always kind of looked at as the bad kid, and I was kind of like the golden child. And once I started hitting my teens, and I started doing all this crazy stuff, my mom was kind of like, "Oh, but he's a golden child. He couldn't be doing anything wrong." And on top of that, I was getting really good grades. And so my mom was kind of like, okay, well, whatever, and also I think she saw, well, he's finally making friends.
Yeah.
So I think she definitely knew, because we fought about it all the time, about me smoking weed, about me doing drugs and all this stuff. And it was definitely a huge issue. But she definitely overlooked a lot of things. um, I think she saw the kids at our house, and I don't know if she knew that we were all smoking weed like constantly or not, or if she didn't care. um, but she definitely found out before I was moving out, and it was a huge issue between my sister and me and my mom and the man that my mom was with at the time. It caused a lot of problems in the household.
Okay.
I actually had the household shot up once
Really?
over drugs. Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane, man. Like when we look at now compared to like all the shit that we did and put like the what we put our family through. Especially like all the. Because I got some stories too, like what I put my kids through, like like with the cartel. It was all kinds of stuff. And you're like, wow, like they all could have died, because of me. And you don't look at it until now, but
Right.
then it is what it is. Like that's just the life.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Why do you think
Because
that
we're
drugs overcome our brains like that, to where we are able to overlook,
um
our families and those types of relationships
yeah.
and our kids?
I mean, honestly, I think it go back to the scientific, parts of it where it hits those receptors and like, you feel like you're
meeting God, or something, depends on whatever your DOC is, and your brain wants to satisfy that over and over and over. So hence the addictive tendencies kick in, and we do that. And it's like at that moment, like, it's not that we don't love our family, but we just don't care because we are so focused on to get that next high, and at least I know that's how it was for me, like
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely loved the way that it made me feel, absolutely. I mean, the whole reason I started, doing opiates and stuff was because I wanted to feel that high way up there, on the pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that I didn't love my kids or I love my mom or my family, any of that. It was just I was a piece of shit addict, that I only cared
No, I
about
don't. I don't.
myself.
I don't think you were a piece of shit addict. I think that
I mean, that's how I felt.
no, yeah, for sure. But I think that the reality is, and the reality is that we love that feeling more.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I was that way too. Like I put my addiction before anything else. My friends, my girlfriends, hobbies, my family, things that I would never think that I could ever replace, I started to replace with drugs because, like you said, the chemical aspect of it. When you fall in love, like I was just telling this analogy, I guess, yeah, this metaphor just the other day, that when you wake up in the morning and you get out of bed, and let's just say it's like a Saturday morning, you don't have to work, everything's great, the sun's out, like the temperature is just perfect, like everything is how it's supposed to be. Like you wake up and you have a great morning, your brain releases about 60 micrograms of dopamine. When you are like when I'm sorry, 30 micrograms of dopamine. When you win a race, like let's say you're in a marathon or something, and you come first place, or you're in a competition, you win first or whatever like that, you're releasing like 60 micrograms of dopamine. When you fall in love with somebody and you get that stomach feeling where you're just like, oh my God, everything's perfect. Like in that moment, you got the butterflies and it's rainbows and, unicorns and all this stuff. And you just feel like nothing in the world could go wrong because you found this person. You're releasing about 100 micrograms of dopamine. Wow. When you take a hit of methamphetamine, you're releasing 1,000 to 1,200 micrograms of dopamine at once. So like you're literally releasing 10 times more dopamine when you take a hit of meth than if you are to fall in love. And that's, for me, was an eye opener because it's like, think about all the things, like, yeah, people are amazing, but like even without meaning to, people are shitty. Like, being like, if you are in a relationship or something, like there's going to be good points and there's going to be bad points.
Yeah.
And the good points are why you stay, and the good points release dopamine. The thing with drugs is they don't give you bad points. You don't get, they don't hurt your feelings. They don't fucking make you feel self-conscious about yourself. So you don't have to work. You don't have to work on a relationship or like put time in to make this dopamine come out, because like you got to be nice to your girl. You got to, play the part and do all the things and, be a good, decent human being for them to be like, yeah, I do love you. And then you get that dopamine. Oh, I feel loved. Well, with drugs, we don't have to do that. We don't have to work for it. We just pay for it. Yeah. And then we get it immediately. There's no freaking, are they going to come home in a bad mood today? Or are they, it's guaranteed I'm going to get that dopamine. Right. And our brain doesn't have free will, right? It's our soul that has free will. Like I get to make the decisions. My brain is only doing what I, as a soul, am telling it to do, like the inner voice. So when we introduce drugs to our brain doesn't know the difference between that dopamine and the dopamine that's released when I fall in love with somebody. It's the same dopamine. It's literally the same chemical. And so our brain starts to say, okay, well, I wake up in the morning and it's not that great of a day. You know what would be great is if I felt like somebody fucking cared, if somebody loved me. And as a matter of fact, I know where I can get that love. I can buy it in a bag, or I can find it in a girlfriend. Well, if I try to find it in a girlfriend, I have the possibility of getting rejected, or I have to put all this time in. I have to do all this stuff. And then I might get this dopamine release, or I could buy it for $10. You know, and our brain starts to get, it's the habit loop. I get the cue where I need some kind of stimulation, some kind of dopamine release, something to feel better about myself, or to feel normal.
Right.
And where do I get that from? Those are my two options. Your brain's going to say, well, I want the quickest option, because it's not, you know, our brain's just like a computer. It's like, well, what's the quickest option? I'm not looking for freaking all the other bullshit that surrounds it. I just want the quickest option. And so, of course, after we continue this habit loop, our brain starts to say, well, the fastest, easiest way to get this feeling that we're looking for is through drugs. And so why am I going to spend hours texting and calling and doing all this stuff with a person, or a hobby, or a job, or, you know, anything else that releases dopamine, when I could just get it this way? And that's where in my opinion the choice becomes a disease. It is no longer controllable. Like in the beginning, I used drugs because I wanted to. I had a choice. I made that choice to be like, I'm doing this for X and XYZ, whether it was validation, numbing, escape, whatever it was. I chose to do it. But once you do it so much, your brain is like, oh, what's the point of everything else? We know how to get exactly what we're looking for. That's when it becomes the disease. And then it becomes uncontrollable, because we've made our brain think that this is the answer.
Oh yeah, you know, and we hear that all the time about people, you know, oh, you know, it's a choice. They make a choice to get high every day, blah 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 blah. You know, and because all they're doing is they've never been in that situation. They've never had to deal with it. So they look at somebody choosing, like you said, in the beginning, it's a choice. I chose in the beginning, you chose, everybody chose in the beginning. But once our brain becomes, you know, we want that and we crave that, and now we need it to function, because if we do not take it, we are no longer going to be functioning. That is when it becomes the disease portion of it, you know?
Yeah.
And people, they don't understand that. They just look at it and be like, no, it's a choice. Like there's no disease in it, but there's very, very much so.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, this dis-ease, if you break it down, is really just like a disorder of the brain. That's what a disease is. And if something is in disorder, it can be reordered, but it has to, you know, it takes time, it takes conditioning, it takes all sorts of things. So it does become a disease, but it can also be, in my opinion, it can be reversed.
Right. So what was kind of like the eye opener for you? What was that point now where you're just kind of like, fuck? Because, you know, you got to that point where you realize there's something else other than this. But what was the turning point?
It happened in a 2-part process. I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was living in a house where basically all I was doing every single day was getting money, doing drugs, and then falling asleep. And then I was just like, you know, I was shooting up constantly, but it was taking me an hour to find my veins and stuff. And I wasn't doing crazy stuff anymore, like the home invasions or robberies or anymore. I had calmed down and basically had gotten to a point where I had like built up so many ways to scheme and scam for money that I didn't have to do a whole lot except for scheme and scam. And so I was just living the life of like going to pick up, going home, doing drugs, and then passing out for hours at a time, waking up and doing the same exact thing. And I had been doing this for a few months by this point. And I mean, at this point, the reason why I had calmed down is because, I had been in home invasions. Like, home invasions had been done on me. I had been robbed. I had been freaking shot. I'd been like held at gunpoint. I've had my nose broken like countless times. I've ran people over with my cars. I freaking have ran from the police. Like, whatever it is, all the stupid shit, you name it, I've done it. But at this point, I had been calmed down. I was just pulling my schemes and mostly manipulating, my family into giving me money and all this crazy shit. And I was just like feeling guilty, shame, fucking just like, this can't be it for me. Like, this can't be my life. Like, and I was on my bed shooting up. And it had been like 45 minutes, and this part's going to get a little bit graphic, so I apologize, but I had been trying to shoot up for about 45 minutes, and I finally pull the plunger back on the needle, and it registers. I start to see the blood. I'm like, oh fuck yes, finally, thank God, because I'm already in withdrawal at this point, and it hurts to even freaking like, it hurts to even scratch my skin. I'm in so far deep into withdrawal that I'm sitting here digging in my skin with this needle. I'm in so much pain from like the abuse that I'm causing myself, and there's blood everywhere. I finally get the needle to register, and I go to push back, and it fucking stings. So I know that I'm missing. And if you continue to miss, you're going to get an abscess, and you're not going to get the relief. You're basically going to waste it. Well, it doesn't get wasted, but it takes like an hour for it to finally like dissolve and for you to feel any better. Anyway, I push it back. It stings. I'm fucking frustrated. I try and find the vein again. I'm looking. I finally get it to register again. I go to push it back, and the blood had coagulated and fucking clogged the needle. So I'm just like at the end of my rope at this point, and I just fucking threw it across the wall. There's fucking blood everywhere, and I just start fucking screaming like, God, why? Why are you fucking doing this to me? Like, why me? Like, what the fuck did I do to deserve this? I can't do this anymore. I can't fucking do this anymore. And I got on my knees, and I fucking started bawling my eyes out, and I said, God, please fucking take my life, or fucking give me strength, because I can't fucking do this. And I laid there on the ground, and I kind of just like hugged my dog, and I picked up the needle that had the coagulated blood, and the needle was all messed up. So I just cracked it open, and I swallowed it, because I was like, I need some relief. If I swallow it, then it'll kick in like 20-30 minutes. After a little bit, I finally fell asleep, and I woke up the next morning feeling like shit, with no money, no nothing. And I was like, I have to fucking do this whole process over again every single fucking day. It's the same shit. Wake up, scheme, feeling like shit until I get my stuff, and then I finally am good enough, and then I can never even save enough stuff for me to like get to the next morning. I'm craving that escape so much. It's like, I can't do this anymore. And I called my mom, and I was like, Mom, I need help. Like, for real, I need help. And I went and got sober, and that's the first part of this 2-part series. So I get down to Columbus, Georgia, and I get like 30 days of off coke and heroin. I was drinking like a little bit to calm the anxiety. I've never been much of a drinker, never used it to escape. It's never been my DOC or anything like that. Like, I can have a beer at a party or something, just have one and then not drink ever, like for months at a time. Like, it's just never been a thing for me. But I was drinking a little bit, and I was smoking weed a little bit just to get through the DTs, and I after 30 days, I was like, okay, cool. I'm like feeling all right. Like, I'm, the withdrawals are pretty good. I'm, feeling some energy coming back. And my mom was like, dude, you need help. Like Quinn, you've been in this shit for fucking 17 years. Like, do you realize you've spent more time being a drug addict than you have being sober. Like, you started doing drugs when you're 15. You've now done drugs for 17 years. You've been on drugs more than you've been sober. And I was like, holy shit. Like, yeah, you're right. Like, I need help, and I need professional help.
Yeah.
But my stubborn brain was like, man, I don't want to go into a rehab program because I'm already sober, and I don't need that. I just need like an in-between place. And then I found sober living, and I went to sober living, and that's where I got into AA. They were making us do like, basically, like, you had to do like 3 meetings a week or something, but there was not much else to do except for look at the girls. So I went every single day, because like I had spent the last like 2 years not even, having any kind of sexual drive or anything, or seeing girls or anything like in that kind of way. So like, now I'm sober, I'm seeing cute girls, and I'm like, oh, the dopamine's rushing like naturally and stuff. And I'm like, oh, well, let me do what I always do and freaking find a way to relate to people. And so I started to do the big book. I started to get heavy on the big book. I started, I knew I knew the traditions, I knew the steps, I knew page 1 through 69 like the back of my hand. Like, I could tell you everything about it. And I started to, use that as my drug, as a way for me to get dopamine. And while I'm, still craving all this, like, oh, I need this, and I need validation, and I need people to think that I'm so smart because I know the big book, and I can, do all this and recite this and that and the rest. I got lost in my addiction, which was the obsession for me to numb or escape or feel validated. I started to realize that like, it wasn't even ever about drugs. It was about this obsession that I had. And the obsession was to feel different, to feel something, to feel validated, to feel wanted, to feel, I wanted to escape the torment of like being molested. I wanted to escape those feelings of worthlessness and all this other stuff. And that was my problem, not the drugs. It was my obsession that was the problem. So I get on my bike one day after a 12-step meeting. I get on my motorcycle, and I was like in this like epiphany moment of like, oh dude, I need to get my shit together. Like, you just spent like, I was supposed to get my bike registered. Instead, I went and freaking took this girl out to dinner, and then I went and got on my bike, and I was fucking hauling ass down the street. I was going like 123, I think is what they caught me at. They clocked me at 123 in a 65, and I was just like, fuck it, I'm out, dude. I'm just going. And I led the cops on a high-speed chase for 15 minutes, just freaking countless misdemeanors, felony fleeing and attempting to elude, freaking red lights, freaking driving the wrong way in traffic, riding on the sidewalk, in a school zone, reckless driving. I mean, they hit me with every moving violation in the book. And they even told me when they caught me, they're like, we could get you a lot worse. Like, we're being real nice right now. And they really did. But when I'm riding off from these cops, I'm trying to escape and everything. I go around this corner, and as I'm leaning into this corner, trying to take this corner real tight, a car comes out that like to the stop sign. A car comes out to the stop sign. I had to like, I wasn't going to be able to make that turn as sharp as I thought. So I had to like get straight and back out. And when I was trying to get back around that corner, I couldn't make the sharp turn, and I flew over my bike into like this patch of grass. There's just cops everywhere. It was insane. So they're like, why are you running? Where's the drugs and all this shit? And they open up my bag, and literally all I had was Drop the Rock, which is like a book that's really popular in the rooms of AA. And I had the big book, the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they're like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? And I was like, man, I don't have a license. I don't have registration. I don't have insurance. Huh. I don't like, I had fake plates on the bike.
What were you riding?
A Ninja 600R.
I mean, so essentially, if
650.
if you were able to get around that corner, you would have been able to dust them.
I mean, I was trying to lose him, man, but this Georgia State Patrol and his freaking Hemi, like he was on me the whole time. He was not letting me go. I mean, it was a 650R. It topped out at like 140. So I had a lot of
about 140.
It had a lot of torque, but like anything straight away, he was right on me. But anyway, so I go to jail, and like, mind you, I'm sober, and abstinent at that. As a matter of fact, I was abstinent, no weed, no nothing. And I lost my place in the sober home that I was staying at because I couldn't bail out. My sister, my mom, they were like, okay, you're just pulling the same old bullshit that you were pulling. You lied about your motorcycle and all this stuff. Like, so they were kind of like, dude, we're fucking sick of you. Like, we've been sick of you. So they're like, you're going to sit in there and figure it out. COVID hits freaking as I'm in jail. And I'm like, you guys gotta get me out of here. Like they're about to lock everything down. And luckily my mom paid the bail for me to get out. And like 2 weeks later, they freaking locked down everybody in COVID. They freaking aren't doing court. They're not doing court hearings. They're not doing anything. Like everything was shut down. You couldn't do face-to-face anything. Like there were no court hearings. They stopped. So I would have sat in there for 2 years if I hadn't gotten bailed out. But anyway, I get bailed out. My mom bails me out, and I'm like, it's been 30 days. I lost the place. I lost my motorcycle, whatever. I'm like, hey, but I'm doing good down here. Like I have 9 months of abstinence, 10 months now with the month that I spent in jail. But I want to stay down here because this is the longest sober time that I've had in freaking years. So they're like, okay, whatever, you stay down there, figure it out, we'll help you out, whatever you need to do. I was like, okay, cool. I find a job, I get all this stuff, everything's going good. And although I had figured out that, my obsession was not the drugs, it was the escape, I still hadn't figured out how to get rid of that obsession, how to be relieved of that obsession. So I had some weak moments. I had dabbled in doing some stuff, and then, I got paid, and I was like, oh, let me just do it for a few days and I'll be okay. And then I was right back in it. And so this is the second part of that 2-part story.
And you made it 10 months at that point.
Yeah, 10 months of straight abstinence. But the entire time I'm freaking craving escape and numbing and getting high and freaking all the rest. So I relapse. I start relapsing for another 9 months. The day that I decided to finally get sober, I woke up and I was already in withdrawal. I call around, looking for help, trying to find money, doing all this stuff. Can't find money. I think I finally manipulated my mom into giving me like $80 or $90 or something. And I call my dude, and the dude would only meet for like a certain amount. It had to be 90 or some bullshit. It had to be a gram, blah, blah, blah. I get the money and all this stuff. And some bullshit with PayPal, they freaking took a couple dollars. I was like $9 short now. And I'm just like, oh my fucking hell. I got so pissed off. I threw my phone on the table. It had ricocheted and broke my roommate's TV. So then I called my mom back. I'm like, hey, like I just broke this TV. Now I'm going to get evicted from my house and blah, blah, blah. I came up with this whole elaborate story, told my sister. Right away, they're like, he's on drugs. Like he's doing shit again.
Right.
So my mom's like, your sister's coming down to Savannah to figure out what the fuck's going on. I'm like, oh my God, okay, whatever. So I go over to my dope dealer's house. I pick up the, my roommate had gotten the other $9 away. We go to his house. We get a gram. I'm sitting down. We're at the Plugs Hotel, and I'm sitting down in the hotel chair, and they're like in front of me with their backs faced towards me, and they're doing a deal on the table over here. And I look over, and the dude's pistol is right there. And I like grab the pistol, and I'm like, I'm gonna kill these motherfuckers right now. He had just re-upped, so he had like an ounce of heroin. He had like a bunch of meth and weed and all this other shit. He had a shit ton of money and all this other stuff. I was like, I'm gonna kill this motherfucker right now. I'm to that point. Like, I just don't give a fuck. And then I was like, okay, well, his girlfriend just walked out of the room to make a play. So as soon as she comes back up, I'm gonna kill all three of them. Because if I shoot these two now, the girlfriend's going to know that I was the one that got away when it comes out that there's two people dead and I was in the room, but I'm not there anymore. So I was like, okay, I got to wait for her to come back up, and then I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill these two. And so I'm waiting for her to walk back up. They're doing their deal. And I look at my roommate at the time, who wasn't necessarily my roommate. He's just one of the dudes that was crashing in the trap house that we were living in. So I'm looking at him, I'm like, fuck, okay, so, like, too bad about this guy, like, nobody's gonna know. And I was like, well, I did come here with them, and I'm trying to think, I was like, there's cameras in the parking lot, I'm gonna walk out of here, they're gonna see that the car pulled up with two people, and it's gonna pull away with one. So I was like, okay,
you were
so
like,
I can't
you were
that.
dead set on killing them.
I was like conspiring to kill these three people, like, as I'm sitting here. And I was like, okay, so I can't kill this, my roommate because of the car situation. So, like, I'm sitting here, if I kill the other two, is he gonna snitch? Is he gonna whatever? I was like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back now that I know that he just re-upped and I know where he's at and everything. I'm just going to come back later on with my gun, and I'm going to kill these two. And we get back to the apartment, and my sister pulls up and she's like, get your fucking shit and get your ass in the car. We're going back to Columbus, which is 2 hours away from Savannah. So I was like, well, no, because I'm, in my brain, I'm like, no, I'm going to go kill these fools tonight. And I'm just not doing that. Like, I'm not ready to give up doing drugs. I was back into relapse full blown at this point. And she's like, no, you're getting in the car because you had a plan to get your shit together. You were doing good. And now you're going astray. You need to get your ass in the car. And I was just like, yeah, you're right. You're fucking right.
And so she was like your saving grace at that moment.
Yeah, 100%. I was like, you're right. And I went up and I got my shit from the house, and we packed her Jeep or her Kia or whatever, and I made sure to make some really fucking terrible, horrible decisions and con her into buying me more dope before I left. But yeah, that was the last day. I was like, okay, you were just contemplating like killing three people over this drug. Like, are you like, do you want to end up in prison for the rest of your life? Because jail and prison, like, I've never been to prison, but jail is no fun. I was like, no. I had just gotten out of jail from doing 30 something days, and I was like, I cannot live that life. I was like, I will not live that life. And I was like, if I go to jail, I'll probably end up committing, unaliving myself. So let's not do that. So I was like, yeah, let me get my shit together. Then I went home, Olive's house, my sister, and she gave me the space to be able to recover. At this point, I finally understand, that my that my addiction is about the obsession and not about the drugs, because I can smoke weed and not sell my freaking belongings to get it. I can have a beer every now and then, or a glass of champagne or for Christmas or whatever. So it's not about the substance. It's about my obsession.
Yeah.
And I told my sister, I was like, I really would like to figure out like what it is that is driving me towards my obsession.
Right.
And she started talking to me about spiritual practices, about sound healing, about all this stuff, and so like about yoga, and I started to get into like the spiritual realm.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess as a result of that, a video had popped up on YouTube about a spiritual awakening with DMT and ibogaine and all this other stuff, and like the ego death and all this stuff. I had heard previously about ibogaine, and I was like, you know what? Like, I think it would be great for me to really address what it is that like I keep running from or needing validation for or whatever. And because I had had experimented quite a bit with psychedelics as a teenager, I was like, I know what to expect.
Right.
So I took a really high dose, and well, not really high. I took 7 grams, and I basically was able to reconnect with like a younger version of myself, where I was like a third person looking at like my current self and my younger self. And I'm watching us as we're watching a video of my life play in front of us, just like flashes of my life, of all the things, the molestation, where it happened, when it happened, what it looked like, what I felt at the time, the things, the objects that I remember that were around me, why I felt, bullied, why I felt alone and ostracized, why I, felt abandoned, and how I felt when my first love broke up with me, how I felt when my mom sent me to Europe to live with my dad for a year when I was 15, and at that point she was like my only like stable parent in my life, my entire life. I was like, so she, I felt really abandoned by her. I tried, we went through all of the things that I could possibly like come up with. And I fucking cried. I bawled my eyes out, man. And I just like, I started to come to a realization that like all of these things, yes, they happened. Mm-hmm. And I cannot change anything. I don't have a time machine. I can't I can't go back and change things. And I know that I have 2 options now. One is that I continue to let this rule my life, the abandonment and the self-loathing and worthlessness and everything else. I can continue to let it rule my life, or I can move on from it. And it helped me to get to a point where like my mom was probably in a place where she didn't know what the fuck to do with me as a 15-year-old getting in fights and doing all this crazy shit. She was trying her best that she could to like, help me. The kids that molested us when we were kids, they were also only kids. So somebody taught them that this was acceptable behavior. So possibly, and this was just like a thing that I fabricated in my head, possibly that kid was also being molested at home, possibly by a parent or whatever. So I was like, that kid probably didn't understand what he was doing at 10 years old. So, I started to like come to an understanding with everything of like, okay, maybe they were like this and maybe they were like that, and maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Doesn't mean that what happened to me was okay. Just means that I've come to understand that like I'm not changing it. I can't change it, and either I can move forward or I can continue to let it control my life through this obsession of escape and numb and all this stuff. I was like, I just want to move on from it.
Right.
And I woke up the next day, and I was just for about a week or so, I didn't really feel like saying a whole lot to anybody. I was really kind of just like processing everything and healing. I did a lot of napping and sleeping and laying out in the sun and absorbing, the electrons from the earth and the vitamin D from the sun and everything else, and kind of just letting myself be a part of like nature, just healing. And I think probably about a month or so later, I was going through all the clothes that I had in my closet, and I put on this gray blazer, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I'm like straightening it out, and I'm like, going through the pockets. I'm like, what the fuck's in my pocket? I open it up, and I had a rig full of heroin in my breast pocket, just ready to go. And my heart just like skipped a beat for a second. I was like, holy fuck, why is this here right now? Like, what are you doing here? It was almost like seeing, that ex that you broke up with because they fucking abused you and abandoned you and hurt you and, physically, mentally, emotionally, and everything. It's like, fuck, what are you doing here? Like, I love you, but we can't be together. I can't see you. And like, I fucking am disgusted to look at you because of how much pain you've caused me and how much you've stolen and taken from me and the relationships you've cost me and everything. And so I'm looking at the needle in my hand, and I'm just thinking of everything. I'm like, all the memories, the first time I shot up and the first, like, how that felt going through my arm. And, I remember freaking, friends that I've lost and relationships and things like, one of the girls that I thought that I only thought I was ever going to marry 2 women my whole life so far. And one of them threw a bag of needles at my face. I was like, you're never going to fucking get away from this, and walked out on me. And that was the end of that relationship after 2 years. And I remember, I just remember all the fucking times that it fucking hurt me. And then I remember me being on my knees and crying out to God and telling him to give me strength or take my life. And I'm looking at this needle, and I'm like, I just fucking don't want you anymore. Like, I can't do this with you anymore. It's like a relationship. I was like, I never fucking want to see you again. Like, and of course I'm going to see it. Just like, of course you might see, if you live in the same town as your ex-girlfriend or whatever, your ex-spouse, you might see them again. And sure, you might get the reminding of like, sometimes we're good and sometimes we're bad or whatever. But like, I'm genuinely just disgusted to look at what I've done to myself. And, I kind of blamed it on the drug as a way for me to like get over and understand that I just can't be with this thing. Like, this just can't be it for me.
Right.
So I fucking cried, man. I cried, and I was like, I just can't do this. I can't do this with you. And I threw it out. I fucking popped off the needle, and I squirted into the toilet, and I flushed it and rinsed it out, threw everything away. And I just had this feeling over me like, dude, it's over.
Yeah.
It's fucking over. Like, and I don't ever have to go back there again.
It's like that weight.
That was like the aha moment for me. It was like, I don't ever have to fucking do this again.
Right.
I never have to go through this again. And for me, all it's going to take is for me to never, ever do coke or heroin again. That's the bottom line. It's like, I just can't do those things. Like, I can go to the hospital. If I break my arm, I'm going to let them administer me with whatever they need to. But if I go and get my teeth pulled or whatever, and I need medication, I'm going to ask to not do that. But if it's what I have to do, if I break my femur or if I get into an accident, whatever, I'm not going to refuse it.
Right.
But for me, I know that all I have to do is just not do coke or heroin again, and I can live a normal life.
Yeah.
And that was like, okay, so if you can smoke weed, you can have a beer every now and then, and this is all about the obsession and not the substance,
Yeah.
then where do we go from here? Like, you have mental health conditions that you haven't been addressing because either you're freaking abstinent or you're not sober. That's what I've been conditioned to believe because of AA.
Yeah.
Or I get like answers for why
Right.
I feel depressed sometimes,
Mhm.
or why I get anxiety or whatever. And I was like, you know what? It's not the drugs that have the problem. It's my obsession. So what I need to do is address what the actual issues are. If I was a diabetic, I'm going to go get insulin. Whether, you know what I mean? That's what you do. It's because that's what normal people do. You have
Right.
to, sometimes you've got to take a medication to just, for your body to function how it's supposed to.
So do
So,
you? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, you're good. I told you I was going to be fucking ranting.
No. You're good. No, because this is kind of the part. This is kind of the part where I was most looking forward to, anyways. So
Heck yeah.
is getting into the whole um uh MAT, kratom, psychedelics, microdosing. I've personally have never microdosed. I've wanted to because I've heard you're not the only one that's had told me that it is amazing to open up your mind and actually see yourself, and just it's just something that it's necessary to do, and and
Mhm.
to each their own. But I've never done it. I do kratom, and I got on it for I've been on it 5 years. I mean, come October, I will be sober 5 years. At least from fentanyl and opiates and whatnot. But um, I see, and I'll be honest with you, man. I see, like you did that post the other day about getting shit, uh, because you're not 100% abstinent, or because we believe that um everyone recovers differently. So I'm kind of giving you the floor on that as far as that goes. So you smoke weed, obviously, which I would rather somebody smoke weed to the day that they die than be on pharmaceuticals. And that's my personal opinion.
For sure. Yeah.
Um, but what have you noticed that as far as when it comes to like microdosing and doing, with mushrooms and doing different things like that, what have you noticed in your own recovery? Like, has it brought things to light? Like, how is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as far as, like I was telling you, I got conditioned to believe that like if you're not abstinent,
Yeah.
then you're not sober. And for me, it's not about taking somebody's title. Like, you know what I mean? Like these, like people out here are busting their ass to be abstinent. A lot of them are going unmedicated for their mental health, which I know is personal hell within your brain. And they're still fighting tooth and nail to be abstinent every single fucking day. And I'm proud of those people. I don't want to take their title of being
Mhm.
sober away from them, because I know that's a struggle that I don't have to deal with anymore. I don't struggle to be sober. Like, it's easy for me to be sober. It's easy for me today to make the choice. Do I want to use again, or do I
Mhm.
want to escape? It's easy for me to be like, I don't want to do that. That's
Right.
just, but there was a point for me in abstinence where I was like, man, this is fucking hard. Like, I want to get high every single day. And so people who are living in abstinence and are either suffering from that, from the torture of having to go unmedicated for mental health, or the people who are 100% completely functioning and living a beautiful life in abstinence, I think that's beautiful. I think that's absolutely amazing. I think
Right.
that abstinence is amazing for the people who it works for, you
Right.
know,
Everybody's
from
recovery is different.
yeah, from being a sponsor and from going through the steps. I saw very, I saw a lot of, I saw probably 40% of people that were going through the program were claiming to be abstinent, and were actually like, and not even actually abstinent, because a lot of them were still doing nicotine and caffeine, but a lot of them were, for the most part, abstinent, as far as no weed, no alcohol, no nothing.
Right.
And they bust their ass to be clean and sober. You deserve that. You deserve that title. Now, I spent 18 years hustling, doing drugs, dealing, home invasions, sticking needles in my arm, homelessness, you fucking name it. And I struggled at one point to just not stick a needle in my arm. And I'm seeing all these friends around me dying and all this stuff. And it's like, I just want people to start to live. You know,
Right.
I found medical assisted treatment, and that helped me to get like to the next step to where I needed to be. And with medical marijuana and stuff, it was just, for me, being somebody who has mental health conditions, it was the choice of either being abstinent and going unmedicated for my mental health conditions, or getting my shit regulated. And the only way to really do that is through an outside substance. You're not going to work out so much that you don't have mental health conditions anymore. You're not going to eat so healthy that you won't have, or you're not going to freaking read a book. Like, nothing that you do is going to do those things besides an outside substance. So I was like, well, what are the outside substances? You know, the doctors are telling me, oh, well, it's going to be SSRIs and benzodiazepines. And I'm like, I'm not going back on that. I'm not going back down that route, because I spent freaking the last 6 months trying to get away from the ball and chain. And I've finally come to a point in my brain where I've said, I don't want to escape through this obsession. And now you want me back on this thing, that was a part of my obsession. I was like, I don't want to do that, because there's a physical addiction to it. And I was like, I'm not doing that. So that's when I explored the plant medicines and started going down that route. What was your initial question? I'm sorry.
So what are the benefits that you've noticed in your recovery? Because we're gonna disclaimer, not everybody recovers different,
Mm-hmm.
and we already know that, but it's just stuff that we just hit over and over again. What are the benefits that you have seen in your personal recovery using plant medicines and with microdosing and different things like that?
Well, for me, I think the biggest thing that I've noticed, one, that it's not a physically addictive thing. I don't have to rely on it. I think one of the biggest things that was keeping me in like the hustle mentality and this drug dealing and lifestyle, all this stuff, it was this idea that like I had to get something that I have to get a prescription for. I have to go and pick it up. Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's the waiting game. Sometimes it's this. It all just felt like the freaking addiction game. It was the ball and chain. It was the freaking, and I didn't want that. So that one in itself is a big part of, the benefits of being on medical assisted on medical marijuana, is that there's no shortage of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's no issues with getting any kind of medical marijuana. Now, with psilocybin, that's a little bit different, because you have to grow it and everything else, or find it on the streets, which I also don't like to do. So, but the biggest difference with smoking. Okay, so I smoke marijuana for my anxiety, which they had prescribed me Xanax. So the benefit there is that it's not addictive.
Right.
Weed will alleviate my anxiety. It's not going to make me feel like, when I would take Xanax, I would feel very lethargic. I feel like zombie almost.
Mm-hmm.
Passing out, doing stuff that I didn't remember.
Right. Yeah.
And I really disliked that part about Xanax, was that I would just like black out. It was a different kind of blackout than from heroin. It was
Yeah.
weird for me. So I didn't
Yeah.
get those. And I take psilocybin for my mental health condition, which is ADHD. And I am going to get reevaluated because I have been experiencing a lot of symptoms of borderline personality disorder.
Yeah.
And I've suspected that I've had it for a while, but I need to get evaluated for that with a professional. But psilocybin helps the dopamine because throughout my life, I've done a lot of things that I've had to. Okay, so like with drug addiction, you start to build neurological passages that makes it easier for you to do drugs. So like the more you're out on the streets, the more you learn to live out on the streets, right? Your brain starts to adapt. The more you play basketball, the better at playing basketball you get. That's neurological passages that are building, that the more you continue to do whatever it is, the easier it becomes for your brain to know how to do it.
Right.
So after training my brain to get like the dopamine and everything from drugs, and then ripping those neurological passages apart after getting sober, the psilocybin will help your brain to start to rebuild new neurological passages. So it's easier for your brain to be like, hey, we just don't do drugs anymore. Instead, we're going to do something else.
Yeah.
We're going to work out. We're going to go jump in a river. We're going to do something nice for somebody. We're going to do volunteer work, or we're going to buy, the person's meal that's behind us at the drive-thru or whatever. And it just makes it easier for your brain to adapt to the current situation that you're in at this very moment. So my thing is that I have low dopamine because ADHD is a mental health condition caused by a dopamine deficiency. So I already produce less dopamine than the regular person, a neurotypical person. So the psilocybin has helped my brain be like, okay, well, we've got to adapt to this situation. We've got to adapt to having lower releases of dopamine, and your brain kind of like brings you up to speed. The psilocybin is like, okay, well, let's build the neurological passages to make it easier for you to function this way.
Yeah.
So it helps me in that sense. And I was on, what was it? Lithium. I was on lithium at one point, and lithium really, I for some reason, it made my mouth taste like metal. Tasted like I had a mouthful of freaking dimes all the time. And I hated taking that. And that also made me feel really, really kind of strange. And I don't even really remember how to express how I felt, because that was quite a while ago. But I remember that I didn't like it. And I don't get those. I don't get those feelings of like, I gotta be a freaking drug addict for big pharma, or I have to, freaking, search for my stuff on the street, or I have to like do all this shady stuff, or like I have to, I just don't have to do all that with plant medicines. It's just such a easier going community of people. Like nobody's gonna be stealing my stuff,
Right.
Like I'm not gonna be stealing somebody else's stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, I got out of the lifestyle, and understanding that my addiction was about the obsession was like, okay, well then maybe like it's okay to smoke weed. Maybe it's okay as long as you're not using it to escape, as long as you're using it to heal, because like you said, it's a better alternative for somebody who has a mental health condition. I'm sure if you were to tell any diabetic, hey, if you take this plant, you won't ever have to take insulin again, I guarantee you they'd take it in a heartbeat, because I know somebody personally who's got type 1 diabetes, and they, bless their heart, go through like some of the biggest struggles I've ever seen.
Disclaimer:
So
we aren't doctors, so
yeah, no,
but
definitely not.
this is our own personal experience with it.
Right.
Just for anybody listening and watching.
For sure. So,
No,
I think it's just, really about understanding ourselves. And I think,
yeah,
this is just my experience.
yeah,
Like, I'm not telling anybody that has a mental health condition, hey, you should stop taking your medication and do something. That's not at
right,
all what I'm saying. I'm saying I found what works for me,
yeah. And what
and
works for
like,
you may not work for me or anybody else, and vice
absolutely.
versa.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, how do you feel on Kratom? Like, I've heard good things and I've heard bad things, and
Yeah,
I'm really interested to know. And
absolutely. I mean, it's just like anything, I mean, I'm sure. I don't know. I'm sure you've done your research. Maybe you have. Maybe you haven't. Kratom, it does bind to the receptors. Just kind of like if you were to take, Suboxone or methadone, it's just not to that chemical aspect. But for me, like honestly, for me, when I got sober, I knew, I'll tell you 100%, man. I knew I wasn't gonna make it being 100% abstinent. I knew for a fact it wasn't gonna happen, because I was that addictive personality. Like I had to have something,
Mhm.
and so I started taking kratom in the very beginning, and it just kind of like even before I stopped using, I was just doing it just to kind of, I withdraw. Somebody would tell me, "Hey, why don't you try it?" I'd do it. And I'm like, "Well, it works." So when I decided to finally just quit fentanyl cold turkey, um, I literally balled up in a room for 2 weeks, and smoked medical marijuana, and I drank kratom. And I could tell you this: this is my own personal experience. Kratom has been a lifesaver for me. It has been absolutely a lifesaver. If I hadn't been on it, I guarantee you I wouldn't be in my recovery as far along as I am right now. With that being said, you do build a tolerance to it, just like anything else. You build a tolerance to it. I will tell you this: it for me, I have been dependent on it for the last 5 years. If I miss a dose, I will withdraw. That's the way it is, and I'm just telling everybody that's watching or listening, like that's the honest truth about it. If I don't take it, I will withdraw, just like any MAT, medications or anything like that. Um, so I'm at the point I've been done for about 2 years. I've been ready to kind of be off of it. Just because I feel like I'm ready, I'm far enough in my recovery where I can finally start to like move on and not be on anything. My goal is to be 100% abstinence, but I don't feel anything when I take kratom anymore. In the beginning, I used to, I drink it, I would feel it, I could feel the pain would go away, the anxiety would go away. Now I'll tell you the truth, I don't feel it. It helps keep me level. Like it
Mhm.
helps keep me just level throughout the day. But I don't, people think even being on it this long that you take it to feel something. I don't feel nothing. I don't feel a buzz. I don't feel absolutely nothing. It just all I know is it helps me be straight, just 100%. Just keep my mind from wandering to other things.
How often do you
Craving.
have to dose?
Uh, so for me personally, I dose probably 4 to 6 hours. I do it. And I take like 10 grams at a time. I used to be at 20 grams every single time I would do it, and I actually have cut that in half completely. So I'm about 10 grams every time I
Hmm.
do it. Um, and I'm not gonna lie, there's times if I get a little bit more stressed out, I might take it a little bit more than I should. Um, I feel like if I realize if I go out and I just do something and I keep my mind busy, I don't have to take it as much. But again, that's kind of like where you're sitting down and you're just like, I was just having this conversation with someone last night, with the addictive personality. Like you sit around and you're just, I'm bored. Just take a dose,
Mhm.
and it's like so
Right.
you have to like learn to be 100%. You got to be you just got to be able to be honest with yourself to decide, am I overusing it? Am I not? you have to be able to have somebody keep you held accountable on it.
Mhm.
And I mean, again, that's my personal experience with Kratom. I wouldn't be here where I am today if it wasn't for that.
Mhm.
So for me, but there is the negatives. I mean, there's people that are addicted to Kratom. There are
Mhm.
people. I trust me. I've heard it all, from the good stuff, bad stuff. They got a documentary, I think, on Netflix called "The Miracle Plant," about Kratom. Um, and that's my experience with it, though. So I'm not addicted to it, but if I stop taking it, I will withdraw. So, am I addicted to it? I mean, in your personality, or in your thought process?
Well, if physical dependence, yes.
Physical, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so yeah, that's a physical dependence is an addiction. Now, I think the issue, I shouldn't say it's my issue. I don't, it's not an issue for me. But the issue that I see often with kratom is that it's not FDA approved, it's not FDA regulated.
Right.
And when I see that, I just get this bad feeling from like when Spice was around. You remember Spice?
Oh yeah, yeah, and
So
that
I
fucked a
actually
lot of people
worked.
up.
Yeah, I actually worked for a company called Deep Powder Marketing, who was like the creator of all the big brands back then, the Funky Monkey, Blind Man, freaking all these crazy, like they had like 20 different strands, and people were counterfeiting them like crazy
Mhm.
because it wasn't FDA regulated. So literally, we were printing the labels and everything. We had like a whole factory of workers that were putting our stickers on and all this stuff, and other companies were just ripping the labels, putting some, and it was an easy product to make. It was Damiana, which is a natural plant, and it's actually a really beneficial plant. But then they were taking acetone and spraying it with a synthetic cannabinoid. And so the process seems really easy. Acetone, synthetic cannabinoid, Damiana, three things. And all you have to do is spread out the Damiana and then spray it. And then you let it dry, and then you package it, and you send it out.
Mhm.
Well, what people were doing is that they weren't giving it enough time to dry, and then they were putting it in these freaking containers and letting it soak in acetone, and then people were freaking opening these things up and smoking them, and they're smoking acetone.
Right.
So these people were like going into psychosis and all this crazy stuff because spice wasn't being regulated. Well, a couple months after I got fired from there because I was stealing like kilos and kilos of freaking spice, um, they ended up getting raided by the FBI
Really?
because of it, and the guy freaking lost all, he lost the business and everything else. It went crazy. Um, and then all these people started freaking coming out that, oh well, we're like, once that company failed,
Mhm.
now all these people had to replace this market, this demand for all this spice that wasn't being produced. So
Right.
people are literally freaking buying the Damiana off of freaking Amazon, getting a synthetic cannabinoid off of some foreign website, and then spraying the acetone and making it out of their bathtubs.
Yeah.
And so that's what scares me. I know kratom's a very beneficial plant. It can be used for great things. I have
Right.
a buddy who owns a kratom and kava bar,
Mhm.
um, and it does really well. But I keep seeing stuff about how it's not FDA approved. How I
Yeah,
think I saw a
you got to watch
story.
it.
I think I saw a story recently about how this guy was spending an absorbent amount of money on it
Mhm.
every
Yeah.
single day. Um,
I've heard, yeah, it's definitely possible. That it definitely is, and I think the biggest thing with the FDA and everything is that you're right. It's not like I mean, let's be honest right now. You can go into a gas station right now and buy a kratom,
mhm, right.
but you can also go into a respected, shop, that actually a store that sells it online. It's very iffy. You have to really. I'm very, very, very picky on where I get it from, the strain that I get, because I've kind of been through everything, and I've had some goods and some bads, and so for me, that's another reason I'm telling you, like, I'm close. Yeah, I'm done, because, like, they've been talking about banning kratom for some years now, because
Mm-hmm.
because the pharmaceutical companies, they don't want to. It's being used in place of opiates. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in all honesty, that's the biggest problem between kratom and big pharma, is that they don't want to back it, or they don't want to get behind it, because people would rather take kratom than take oxy. And
Mm-hmm.
and again, that's everyone's different as far as how it affects them, what they use it for. But so when big pharma's going around and they're saying, oh, kratom is bad, they're going to start throwing statistics out there, this person died, blah blah blah, all because,
Mm-hmm.
and then they say they're going to have kratom in their system, but it's just kind of like, if what I don't know, look up that documentary if you haven't seen it. It's called The
Yeah,
Miracle
I'll
Plant.
check it out. So
But
what do you think? So in your opinion, what are the benefits to kratom over getting on medical assisted treatment like Suboxone or methadone?
um So I'll be honest with you, I can't speak for methadone or Suboxone, because I never went that route. I never did. Now, a doctor wanted to tell me, he wanted me to go on Suboxone, and I said nah, because I had family and I had friends, that got clean. They went on it. Same thing with methadone. I just saw that and I was like, no, I really don't want to, like, go down that route. Again, it may work for somebody else, but I knew it wasn't going to work for me personally. So I can't speak as far as the effects goes, because I've never taken either of those.
Hmm.
However, um, when I do talk to other people, like, we did say, like, they've never had kratom a day in their life, and I've never had a Suboxone or methadone a day in our life. We talk and we exchange and we say, what do you feel the beneficials is? I don't have to go to a clinic every single morning to, dose.
Hmm.
Um, I don't have to worry about, as far as, like, with methadone, it has a very, very high half life. So, the part to be able to take it and
Hmm.
then go use another drug and then overdose and die is obviously very high because of
Hmm.
it. So I don't have to worry about any of that. And I guess that's the biggest way that I look at it. Like, I don't have to get a doctor's prescription for it, Like, I could
Hmm.
literally just go find a respectable shop
Right.
and I can buy it. And that's just what works for me, though.
Hmm. So it's very interesting. So yeah, actually, I have been to the methadone clinic, and I have done kratom quite a few times, but never really looked at it as like a form of like treatment. I was
Right.
usually using it to try and get high.
Yeah.
Now with methadone, in my opinion, it has some pretty bad side effects, some long-term effects, and same with Suboxone. They I personally, I went to the methadone clinic when I was in my 20s, and then I found out that at that time, they wanted me to take methadone for the rest of my life. And I didn't feel good about that. So I quit the methadone clinic. And then when I tried going back 10 years later, they weren't able to get blood work from me because my veins were so shot. They couldn't, check to see if I had STDs or anything. So they're like, we can't treat you.
Right.
So I literally had to go on the streets to try and find a way to get off of opiates. And what I ended up doing was buying Suboxone just off the street. I bought 10 strips. 10 strips cost me $100, and I broke those strips up into little pieces, and I tapered myself off of that. Which I don't recommend anybody doing. It's not safe.
Yeah.
And that's how I did it. Nowadays, I'm hearing a lot of really good things about Sublocade. And Sublocade is just like Suboxone. It's buprenorphine. with naloxone, I think. And yeah, it's a shot that they give you a shot in your arm,
Yeah.
and you take it once a month. And
Yeah, it's got like Vivitrol.
yeah, just like Vivitrol. And the thing that what I've heard from multiple people is that most people only have to take it up to 3 times. After the third time, most people don't ever take it again. So you take it once a month for 3 months, and then you don't ever have to take it again. Most people actually have told me that I only did it once. I only had to do it once. But if you're taking something that binds to the same receptors, like kratom or methadone or any other opiate, you're gonna have to do gonna have to do the 24 to 48 hour detox to be able to get onto the Suboxone or Sublocade.
That's what they wanted. I talked with my doctor at one point about going on Vivitrol. I never really got into what you were just talking about, but Vivitrol was something I was looking into. And my doctor did tell me that I would have to. He wasn't familiar with kratom, so it was one of those things where he didn't know what kratom was, so he had to research it and all this other stuff. But I was told though that if I wanted to do a Vivitrol shot, I would have to do the whole. I would have to be off 7 to 10 days, fully. I had to have it out of my system. And again, I don't know how accurate that was, but that's but
I mean that's
what I was told,
Yeah, that's a safe thing. But and for a doctor who doesn't know much about kratom or whatever, and most doctors don't really do. Most doctors don't even know that you have to wait a certain amount of time. Like they'll just administer you small pieces and make it so that the small pieces of buprenorphine are pushing those inhibitors off of your freaking receptors. Right. And they'll just slowly get you into withdrawal until you're fine, until they've pumped you so full of buprenorphine that it overpowers the withdrawal. Right. So with Suboxone, you actually only have to wait, and it really depends. It does depend on the half-life of the drug, but the longest one is methadone. Methadone has a 48-hour half-life depending on how much you've been using, but there is always going to be an initial like shock. Like when you take Suboxone for about an hour, you're gonna suffer. You know what I mean? It's gonna be shitty. Yeah. If you're on like a high dose. Now, if you're like on a low dose, if you're like taking a Lortab a day or a couple Lortabs a day or something, you're not gonna have to wait that whole time. But with kratom, and I guess don't take me on my word for this since I'm not a professional, but as far as I know, you only have to wait about 48 hours to be 100% sure that you're not going to go into precipitated withdrawal from the Suboxone. Yeah. But it makes sense. Yeah, there's a thing called the COWS chart. Yeah. And you can basically be pretty sure that you're not going to miss the boat and get into precipitated withdrawals if you follow that chart. Yeah. And it's really simple. And I'll just break it down real quick. The easiest way for you to know if it's okay for you to take your Suboxone is if you can't fucking stand it anymore. And I'm not talking like, okay, this kind of sucks, like my anxiety. No, I'm talking like, bro, you've got to be sneezing. You got to be having the eyes watering, the freaking hot and cold flashes, the yawning, the fucking rocking back and forth, the goosebumps. Like, when you're in full withdrawal. You've got to be in like full withdrawal, fucking to the point where you're rocking back and forth and you're fucking rubbing your legs and you're like, I fucking can't do it anymore. Yeah. It's an unfortunate part of it, but like.
And that right there is what, if I ever get start wanting to be weak or anything, I think of the withdrawals. And I think of that and I'm like, I would not wish that on my worst enemy. So I just, and again, with kratom, there is withdrawal, but the withdrawal is, I'll tell you 100% right now, because I've already done it a couple of times. Not like I'm not full blown, but it is a fraction of like a fentanyl withdrawal or a heroin withdrawal or anything like that. So But I do look at that and I'm just like, oh God, I never want to experience that type like that withdrawal ever again in my entire life. You know,
Bro, you're
so
not
and
lying,
I'm
man.
just so when you're saying all that, like, I was just cringing about it. But
Hmm. Yeah,
but
I woke up. It was either yesterday or the day before, man, and I woke up and I was like, fuck, man, why am I so drained lately? Like, what the fuck? Like, this sucks. And I sat there for a second. I was like, yeah, but this don't fucking suck anywhere near as bad as it fucking does
yep,
when you're going through full withdrawal and you
yep,
fucking scrambling to find some money to get some dope. I was like,
yep.
yeah, all right, I feel a little bit better.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I want to touch on the main point really quick. So what led you to become recovery content creator? You got some viral videos. Like, how did all of that come about?
Well, my sister actually had encouraged me to make TikToks, and I wasn't really feeling it. Hadn't really ever been like big on social media with anything. Like, I had MySpace, but like, and I had a Facebook, but I never really posted. I wasn't present on social media like that. I grew up in the 90s on the streets a lot, hustling, wheeling and dealing. So like we weren't ever on social media, like I played video games, but like when the internet was really coming popular, I was out on the streets. I was hustling. I was doing, old school way. Like, I didn't know how to use computers or how to type, and like, sure, we took typing classes or whatever, but it's just like, it just wasn't something. It was very foreign to me. So
Right.
when my sister introduced it to me and stuff, she's like, "Oh, you should start doing it." I've saw this guy, follow this guy. He does recovery content. Maybe you should do it. Whatever. And I was kind of going through like, well, I can't talk about my recovery journey because I'm not abstinent. Nobody's going to take me seriously. Nobody's going to, everybody's just going to make a joke of me because AA had basically instilled in my mind that if I wasn't abstinent, I didn't deserve to have the title of sobriety. And after I was like, it was like a month before I hit my 1 year. I was like, dude, nobody's ever going to take you seriously, like, if you don't have a year sober even. So I was like, okay, let me wait, because maybe this is just a fluke. Maybe I am going to relapse. Who knows? So I waited, and then I was like, you know what? I'm not, like, I didn't go into social media to make money. I was literally just like trying to show people that like abstinence wasn't the only recovery path to live a decent life. And that's all I wanted, because I didn't have a decent life. I was praying to God that I freaking just wouldn't stick a needle in my arm. And I know that there are hundreds and thousands of people out there who are just grateful to not stick a needle in their arm today. And they smoke weed.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? Maybe there's a happy medium between being abstinent and understanding that my addiction wasn't about drugs, it's about the obsession. And I was like, that's what I got to do, is I got to inform people that like it's not about drugs, it's about the obsession.
Right.
And they talk about that in AA, and I was like, I think that I'm onto something. Like and then Demi Lovato came out with that Cali Sobr song and all this stuff, and all these celebrities started coming out saying that they're Cali Sobr, that they don't do drugs, they just smoke weed. And I was like, oh wait, that's a thing. Like I can actually, I have a title that I can claim now, and people know what the fuck I'm talking about. Like, okay, like maybe I am onto something. And I just started sharing my journey. I just started telling people like, look, like, sure, maybe I'm not abstinent, but I'm living a good life. I'm living a happy life, a fulfilling life, and I want to live today. So I remember there was a time where I didn't want to live, and now I do. So let me show people that it is possible to at least be happy, even if you're not abstinent.
Yeah.
And with all the people that are dying from fentanyl overdose and all this crazy shit, I was like, that's what we just need. We just need these motherfuckers to stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's to the point where I was like, I'm just tired of seeing people dying. And if they're going to smoke weed and not die, then fucking let's do it. Like, if they're going to take kratom and not die, then fucking do it. If they're going to like go to a doctor and find out that they have a mental health condition and they find a pill or fucking some shit that works for them to just not stick a needle in their arm and not die, then fucking do it.
Nice.
You know, the girl, the main, like, this girl that I was like head over heels for in AA when I first started going, she was abstinent. She had like 9 months at the time. You know, she was like a really big part of the driving force of why I tried to stay abstinent. And then I get sober through plant medicines and all this shit. I get back in contact with her and she tells me, oh yeah, after 3 years of abstinence, I went and got evaluated by a medical professional. They told me I have freaking so-and-so mental health conditions. I have to be on this medication. And the medication was Adderall. Mm-hmm. Now she's on prescribed amphetamine.
Yeah.
You know, and this girl who was freaking telling me abstinence is the only way, blah, blah, blah. Now she's telling me, well, I got with my sponsor and I did this and we talked about it and my sponsor agreed, my physician agrees, you know, I'm being held accountable, I'm doing all the right things, I'm not abusing, I'm taking as prescribed, blah, blah, blah. And she's living a happy life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And this girl who freaking was like the AA freaking, like the big book thumper that was like, oh, abstinence. Now she's on a pill and she's still going to AA and she's still claiming sobriety. So I'm like, if you can claim sobriety, then I sure as fuck can claim sobriety because I'm taking a plant alternative and you're taking an amphetamine and you're claiming sobriety. And I think that if, you know, after going and being a sponsor and all this stuff and finding out that 60% of people are claiming abstinence when in fact they're on some kind of medication, and then the other 40% are likely either smoking nicotine or drinking caffeine, which by the big book definition is not abstinence. I was like, okay, so really all these people out here are just basically picking and choosing what they want their sobriety to look like, you know, what sobriety is to them. Because if you go by the big book, caffeine and nicotine is not abstinence. But if you ask this guy who's drinking caffeine and nicotine in the AA, he is abstinent. But if you ask this person who's taking amphetamines prescribed by a doctor and okayed through a sponsor, they're still sober. You know what I mean? And it just goes down the list. Like, what is sobriety to you? And so that's why I started speaking out, talking about my journey, you know, trying to push this idea that it's about the obsession and not the substance. And people really just started vibing with it, I guess. I also make a lot of content that dealt with like my past, going through, you know, being molested and my stepfather being very physically abusive towards my mom. And he was a cokehead alcoholic and all this stuff, talking about domestic violence. That also got some traction and, you know, people started to relate with me. And I was like, okay, well, you know, maybe I can make this into a career. Maybe I can help people as a career because that's what I really want to do is I want to help people. So if I can do that and live, that would be great.
Yeah. So, just to kind of, so where are you at? Where are you most active on right now?
On
TikTok
Facebook.
or Facebook? Okay.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, really active on Facebook. I'm going to take a step back for a few days.
Yeah,
maybe a week
you
or
posted
so.
something.
Yeah, Facebook's just not giving me, like, not the people, but the algorithm is not showing me any love right now. And I've noticed that with a lot of the creators that have the around the same numbers that I do.
Yeah.
And yet these new content creators who are coming out have like 80,000, 90,000 are getting like 3-4 times the views as me. So my TikTok started picking up a lot and I've been posting a lot more to TikTok. I'm going to probably focus a lot more on my short form TikToks and my long form YouTubes. But at the moment, Facebook is where I'm the most active. Right. It's definitely not where I'm the easiest to be reached because there's so many
it,
messages
it took
and
it took
stuff.
me like what 3 times, 2 3 times to get before you responded to me. So, but
I
it's all good,
apologize.
man. You're good. You're good. You responded. I mean, because I did an episode with Benjamin Lerner, and he was like, "Yeah, man, it took a while for Quinn to get back to me too." So I was like, "Yeah," but just for the people that don't know, and we'll also put it in the description when the videos dropped. Uh, where can people find you at? What's your handle? All that good stuff.
So it's for TikTok, it's Quinn.stone.tt. Instagram is Quinn.stone.ig. Facebook is Quinn.stone.fb, and YouTube is just Quinn.stone.
All right.
So it's
Yeah.
whatever the handle is. Dot,
Okay.
whether it's
There you
TikTok,
go.
Facebook, Instagram, makes
Yeah.
it easy. I wish I could have gotten the YouTube handle, but I guess I
Yeah.
applied for it too late. Somebody
Um,
picked it up.
and then I'm noticing the merch that you've been promoting. Is that your brand?
Yeah. So Sobr is the brand, and I have the two. Well, this is one of the designs, but my main two are pushing for plant medicines, which is Cali Sobr, and then I have my like more inclusive side, which is Party Sobr, which kind of encompasses like being able to party sober.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are two of the things that I'm going to be focusing on real heavily because for a while that I saw that my content was starting to be more driven towards like how many views and how much money can I make, and pushed more away from the idea of me really wanting to do this to help people. So I'm going to take I'm going to take pay cuts and everything from not doing as much viral content, but it's more fulfilling to me than just spending a few hours a day doing trending bullshit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Man, I appreciate you coming on. This was definitely a little bit longer than anticipated, but I knew it was gonna. I
dude,
knew
I
that we
always
were.
do this.
No, it's fine. I knew that we were gonna have a longer episode just because the stuff that we've expressed in the very beginning, back and forth talking, and I knew it was gonna be like that. So
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
I appreciate it.
Before
I think I
before
did the same thing with Benjamin too. I was like, I'm sorry,
yeah,
it
it's
took
all
like 2 hours.
dude. You know what? I'm fine with it. So, um, last question before we wrap up. And this is one I ask everybody. What would you say to the person that is on the ledge, just like you were, begging, God to either heal them or kill them, and they're hanging on by a thread, and they just need to hear some encouragement, to pull themselves back out of it. What would you tell them?
I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily encouragement or not. But for me, I had to ask myself, like, because I wanted to die. I didn't know how to be happy, and the question that I asked myself was like, do I want to die or do I just want to be happy? And asking myself that question and coming to the realization like do I really want to die, or is it that I just don't, like, I just am not happy? Like, is there an alternate reality where I don't need drugs, where I don't need to like be somebody else or feel another way or do anything? Does that even seem appealing to me? And I was like, yeah, dude, I don't want to fucking die. I just want to be happy. Like, I
Yeah,
want to have friends. I want to have relationships, and I want to feel loved, and I want to feel, accepted and wanted and needed and all these other things. Like, I don't want to die. And when I said, okay, so I know that I don't want to die, what is it going to take for me to live? And what is it going to take for me to live that life, the life of
yeah,
happiness? I think that, that's a really good question to ask yourself. It's like, do you want to die, or do you just want to be happy? Because we know how to die. We know the answer. We know how close it is and how easily it is for us to get there, especially with fentanyl and stuff. Like, all I have to do is just double the dose of what I usually take and I'm gone.
Yeah.
Or I can even just get some new shit, not even mean to, and be gone.
Yeah.
So it's like really, like, ask yourself, like, do you want to die or do you want to live?
Yeah.
And if you want to live, then what the fuck is it going to take for you to live?
Yeah.
And whatever that is, do it. Whether
Yeah.
it's freaking getting on medical assisted treatment, checking yourself into a 1-year rehab, finding, like, going to an ayahuasca retreat, like something, there's got to be something. Figure it out.
Yeah. What I like to tell people is just think about how much you used to chase the dope man. What would you do to get your fix? You would walk 10 miles barefoot, 2 a.m., do it. But if we put as much effort into our recovery as we did trying to get that next fix, just imagine the way that our life would be. And I try to literally tell people that, like,
Yeah.
put as much effort into your recovery just to stay sober for that day as you did in chasing it,
I agree, and I really love that. I do. I think that like I think that recovery doesn't even have to be like that. It doesn't even. It's like I told you, man. I don't struggle to stay sober. It's become so easy to me.
Yeah.
Sober, Cali sober. Like, yeah, I smoke weed, but I don't have to have it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I microdose, but I don't have to have it. Like, I'm not physically addictive, like where I'll withdrawal or whatever.
Right.
And I just went on vacation to the Caribbean, and I didn't smoke out there. I just, there's times where I have to go without it, and that's not a thing. It's not an issue. I don't struggle to stay sober. You know what I mean? And I think that, like, people who are struggling to stay sober, it's because they haven't yet found what it is that makes them want to live. Like I shouldn't have to freaking, feel like I'm doing everything that I can, like I did. And I hope that you don't take this as me, like, disregarding or discrediting your statement. I think it's a really great statement.
No. Yeah.
I think that being sober shouldn't have to be something that you really have to work for. I think that once you get to an understanding of your addiction and what it is that you're craving and everything else, it'll just come easy, and then you just know which path that you have to take to get to that life goal. Like, I don't want to use. So what am I gonna do? Well, I know that when I get triggered, I'm gonna, feel the want to do this thing. I'm just gonna have to do something else. I have to, like, redirect my attention. I have to, and yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, however long you've been in an addiction for, it's likely that you're going to spend, that time trying to fight your brain to get out of that way of thinking. And that's why fucking psychedelics are so great. It's because it cuts that time down, because it breaks down those neurological passages and then it rebuilds them. But yeah, your brain gets conditioned to be like, oh, that's the same fucking store that we used to drive by every single day and meet Ray the dope man. You know what I mean? And if we don't fix those neurological passages, doesn't matter how many times you drive past that shit, how many times you've been sober, how long you've been sober, you're going to be 80 years old driving past that gas station and be like, that's the gas station I used to pick up dope from Ray.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But no, it makes sense. I mean, it definitely, it's, I get it. Yeah. And I think that's what we're all about, is it's all about, just living our life and wanting to be happy and wanting to just deal with life's problems, sober, and just, whether it comes naturally, like you said, or we got to fight for it. At the end of the day, we got to do what we got to do. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think if we fight to find the answers, as hard as we fought to get dope, then yeah, for sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's definitely there's no doubt about that. And there is an answer. There's an answer out there for everybody, no matter how far off you are or how bad you've gotten or how freaking skinny you look or sunk in, or no matter how much dope a day that you do, or like I don't care. There is, as long as there's a breath in your freaking lungs, there is hope. You can do it. You can do it.
So appreciate it again, man. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate you, Jared.
Just people that's just listening and watching, go show Quinn some love. Go listen to his story. Go support, cop some merch. Support the brand, and then just know that anybody that's out there, if you're struggling, you can reach out to anyone. You can reach out to Quinn. You can reach out to us. We're here 24/7. And we're just here to spread that hope and just let other people know that if we can do it, they can do it. So,
That's right.
Until next time, we love you guys. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for watching, listening, viewing, subscribing, share this out. And until next time, we'll see you later. Peace.
Peace.